So that's the end of session one formally. And it was a little bit over an hour, but we did okay. And I've got some questions coming in, but I want you to just hit me up with questions. What are some things you're trying to sort out and figure out? You can type them in that chat box. One of the comments I'm getting is that this is a brilliant course. Where have you been for the past 4 years of my life? I really appreciate that, Andrea. Thank you. Jackie's asking, where can I find the PDF? So the PDF will come to you via email, or it'll be underneath the video when I share it. That you'll be able to see it there. You'll be able to click. It'll be really, really clear. I'll also be sending out via email this recorded version of the presentation, and you'll be receiving a like a link to where you can download the MP3 of this if you want to listen to it like as a podcast, like in your car if you want to re-listen to certain parts of it. So you'll get all of that plus the agreement in an email that I'll send to you in just a little bit. The homework will also be in there. So I'm just looking forward to see if we got questions. Sarah asks, if I'm a counselor, should I pretend that I'm young when I'm coming up with a topic for my essay? No, I'd say write your life story. Like legit write your life story. Like have you been through challenges in your life? And I'm asking, so I'm speaking to the counselors for a second. Or have you been through a challenge in your life? Have you been through challenges? And do you know what you want to be when you grow up? I mean, I wouldn't be offended if you asked me that. But I want you to really think about it from now, because I think that more personal growth can happen. And that's what I'm about through this process. Like I want it to be hard. I don't want it to be hypothetical. I want it to be like, I want you to really tell this story, your story. So write it from the perspective of who you are now, however old you are now, the challenges that you've been through. Because usually as we get older, we kind of start to recognize what we went through as challenges. And most counselors I find write the challenges version. And then how has that helped shape who you are now and who you want to become and who you want to be? Especially for counselors, I think this can be really empowering. Athena asks, so the narrative structure also works for the SAC type, correct? Yeah. So if you have been through challenges, but you don't know what you want to study, I want you to just try and map out the narrative structure in terms of, well, what were the experiences you went through? Like what started it all for you? The raising of the stakes, another way to ask that is like, well, what made it even tougher than that? Take it to the next level. What took things to the next level in your life? What made things even more difficult? And kind of phrase those. Was there a moment of truth where you had to make a choice in your life, like a turning point where you decided, I'm not going to like roll over and just do nothing. I'm going to do something about this. And you started to like actively do something, become more invested and involved and engaged in your life. What was that moment? So essentially I'm asking you to kind of write out the beats of your story, to tell your own story, to see if you can kind of begin to outline it. I'm going to give you lots of resources tomorrow on how to outline it more specifically, but don't worry about the ending right now. Well, I'll say, Athena, right now for the ending, if you don't know what you want to study, I just want you to think for your ending, what values were shaped through your challenges that are going to serve you in whatever career that you end up in. So let's say, for example, that your parents were divorced and you moved around a lot and you developed, what value did you develop? Well, for me, I moved around a lot, and so that developed, I had to become really adaptable. And so adaptability is a value that's going to serve me in college and beyond, no matter what I study, no matter what I do in my careers. So think, Athena, based on the challenges that you went through, what values were shaped? And that's what you can kind of end with on your essay. And you'll see an example of that in the type C essay in the PDF. Surya is asking, I know the process is different for everybody, but on average, how many drafts do your students go through before their final draft? Interesting question. So what I would say, Surya, is the obvious answer, and I'll go beyond this, is like it depends, and it depends on the student. And well, let me say what it depends on. So it depends on how hard you're willing to work, first of all. Some students aren't really willing to work hard, and they'll want to do this in like 4 drafts. And I think 4 drafts is not enough. I think it's going to take to really write, like the essays that I showed you, which are some of the best essays I've, worked with students on, took like 10, 15 drafts. Okay. So if you're interested in working hard and shaping it, because neither of those students would call themselves writers. They would say that they are not very good at writing. So that it took them 10 to 15 drafts. Could you write an essay in like 5 drafts? Yeah, sure. You could write a great essay in 5 drafts, but I think you'd need to be a writer. And by writer, I mean somebody who really loves writing, who spent their lives reading and writing. So the less time you spent writing, I think the longer it takes. So I think it depends on that too. It also depends on the type of essay you're writing. So if if you've been through challenges, if you're in the type A category, you've been through challenges, and you know what you want to study, it can be a little bit easier, and because you know kind of what your topic is, and you know where it's headed. For the students in the type D essay category, it can take a little bit longer. And it can take longer, not just with the drafting, but to find the topic, because we don't know what the content is necessarily right away. So if you're in that boat right now, have no fear. You'll get there. It's just going to maybe take you a little bit longer. I still want you to try and find a topic before the next session, but just be patient with the process, and I'll give you some more resources for that tomorrow. So Surya, to give you a really clear and direct answer, I think it's going to take about 10 to 15 drafts to write a really awesome essay. Next question. At the end of the lesson, what were the questions about knowing values and how would I develop them? Can you, maybe Raisha, could you clarify that question? I'm not quite sure what that means. At the end of the lesson, what were the questions about knowing values and how would I develop them? Maybe I'll try and guess what you're saying, but in terms of how do you develop the values? If you're in, basically, I want you to use that values sheet to choose, if you know what you want to study, to choose the values that are going to serve you in whatever career you go into. Or if you don't know what career you want to go into, just choose the values that are most important to you, like you did in the exercise, and then just write a little bit. It could be just a few sentences about how you came to develop that value. You don't need to write down about how that value is going to serve you in that career. That comes later. I just want to know, for this first part, for this brainstorming, how did you develop that value? Because we're trying to get more content for your world, and that's going to help me understand your world a little better. Okay, so Luis is asking for me to clarify a little bit more about raising the stakes. Okay, so great question. Raising the stakes means this. So in a movie, let's say it's an action movie. Let's say the movie begins with a UFO strikes down, and the inciting incident is like, you know, it's created this little kind of like, the lights have gone out in the neighborhood. Okay, so that's the inciting incident, this UFO crashes. Raising the stakes is the moments when things become more and more important to more and more people. So in an action movie, even though it started off and it just turned the lights off in the neighborhood, like maybe some green slime is oozing out, and we find out that that slime is radioactive. It's toxic. Okay, now there's the threat of like death, not just the lights going out, but like somebody could like get hurt from this. Then we start to see like aliens are coming out, and those aliens have guns, and those aliens start to take over not just the neighborhood, but they start to like, oh wait, look, now there's another UFO that's landed somewhere else in the nation, and more aliens and ooze are coming out of that one. And then it happens in, you know, Shanghai, and we start to see it's happening all over the world. So raising of the stakes means things become more and more important, more and more dangerous to more and more people. Now that's for like a big picture action movie. In a drama, it might start off with something as simple as like a guy loses his job, and it's like, oh, that's too bad. But then not only does he lose his job, but he gets a bill in the mail that says, you're late on your credit card payment, or let's say you're late on your rent, and if you don't pay us by Tuesday, you're getting kicked out of your house. So now not only has he lost his job, but he's maybe going to get kicked out of his house. So that's raising the stakes. It's becoming more and more important to someone personally. Sometimes the raising of the stakes happens internally. So let's say that guy, that example that I just gave, that guy not only is going to lose his, get kicked out of his house, but then his girlfriend breaks up with him for whatever reason. And now he's lost his girlfriend. And so this day that threatened to like give him a bad day is now threatening to give him a bad month, a bad year, and maybe give him just a crappy, it just changed his life's course. Okay. So raising of the stakes are details that help us understand why it was such a big deal for you, the main character. I've got a thank you from Sunita. You're welcome. So Colleen says, I get stuck working with kids after we've done the objects and values list. Coming up with a topic gets us stuck because they're pretty general. Okay, Colleen, so I want to invite you, and part of this in session 3, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. But it could be that the objects and values aren't being taken deep enough. And by taken deep enough, I mean, there's a lot of information there, but I find that the quality of questions really matter at the next point. So let me give a tip to everybody. And we'll talk more about this in the next session, in session 3 as well. But when it comes to the objects and values list, I want you to ask questions that feel a little bit vulnerable and edgy for you to ask. Now, what do I mean by that? So, I could look at your objects and say, so what do these objects mean to you? But that's kind of general, and it doesn't feel really vulnerable. Another question that I might ask is, let's say a student is like, oh, this watch reminds me of my dad. And this student says, and so then my question could be something a little bit more vulnerable, like, so tell me about your relationship with your father. What's it like? And let's say the student says, fine, whatever. Like, I could leave that lie, or I could go deeper. I could go, no, really. Like, what's he like? What does he do for a living? I mean, what does he do for a living is actually a bad question. But like, do you have good memories of him growing up? Do you feel close to him? So these questions that are like really prying, or that are kind of personal questions, those are the type of questions that I want to encourage you to ask and to go deeper and to see what's there, because everybody's got an interesting relationship with their father or their mother. And there's a lot of information there. I'm not saying that you have to like turn this into a therapy session, but you might want to use some techniques that might turn this into a therapy session. And what techniques are those? It's asking brave and interesting questions. And if you're thinking, well, Ethan, I don't have a list of brave and interesting questions. Well, it's a good thing that I created one. So if you Google College Essay Guy, brave and interesting questions, you'll see a list of 100 questions that you can use with your partner. And these are questions that are meant to really dig deep. Go to the last 15, and those are like some of the most vulnerable questions that you can ask. Questions that you would never think of asking like a complete stranger. But I'm encouraging you to ask those questions and see where that goes. So Colleen, before the next session, I want to encourage you to go and ask some brave and interesting questions. If it feels boring or it feels like you're not really getting anywhere, chances are it could be that because you're not taking enough risks. So I'm going to put it on you, not the student, to really take some risks. Be vulnerable, ask personal questions. Now, some people might say, well, I don't want to get too personal, but this is a personal statement. So my answer to that would be like, well, then we might just stay on the surface all day, and it's going to be kind of boring for both of us. And it's going to yield an essay that's just kind of like, cool, whatever. So I want to encourage you to like do whatever you can to make this session interesting. And again, sessions 2 and especially session 3 are going to be about how to dig deeper. With like an example that I'll give is one time a student and I were working with the objects and values list, and it was kind of boring. And I said to my student, I go, are you kind of bored right now? And he was like, yeah. I was like, what can we do to be less bored? And so we brainstormed together to figure out like what would be more edgy, more interesting. And I can't remember exactly what we came up with, but we found something that was like more interesting. So just for me, like presenting that I was bored and saying that allowed for like a new level of like realness. And I think he respected me for it and opened up a little more because I like spoke to what was really happening in the moment. So Colleen, without getting into all the content of sessions 2 and 3, that's kind of where those are. I would say go to the list of brave and interesting questions and check that out. So I just want to encourage everybody to check out that list. Let's see. Okay. Gina asks, if a student had a bad accident that derailed them from the path they were on, would that be a good topic? Possibly. The question that I would ask about that topic or any topic is, did that experience help you to develop specific values that are going to help you in college and beyond? So every topic is a lever into like opening up the student's or your heart. Okay, so is it going to make a good lever? I don't know. Talk to the student and find out, see where it goes. Sam says, what if I had a hard time coming up with the objects for the objects exercise? Sam, try the objects exercise on the website. There's a 15-minute version. Try it one more time, spend 15 more minutes. And then if that doesn't work for you, there are other brainstorming exercises at the bottom of that link. So if you just Google College Essay Guy, objects exercise, underneath you'll see some other brainstorming exercises. Or just Google College Essay Guy, brainstorm exercises. I'm going to introduce 2 of those tomorrow. But if you want to get a jump ahead and get more done, you can look at those on the website. Let's see. Maggie asks, how many example essays should I start with? How many is too many? I think 4 is enough. I think the 4 example essays that I gave you, that I'll give you in the packet in just a little bit, are enough. So that's how many I would say. And if you you can look at, you actually already, you've got the packet, you've got the PDF, but I would say, 4 is enough, and 1 of each type is enough. Elsa says, I don't know specifically what career I want to pursue, but I think I have a pretty good idea of the person I want to be when I grow up. Great. Can I mention a description of that person at the end of the essay instead of stating my intended career path? Elsa, I think that's an awesome idea. So in terms of the type of person you want to be, totally. I could see how that could be really interesting and specific. Just get as specific as you can with what that vision is for you. So Stanley asks, would these type A through D essays work for all prompts by the College Board, or are there certain questions that cause us to write in a different way? So Stanley, I think by College Board, you mean Common App. And if by Common App, you mean like the essays that you'll have to write for all the private schools, one of these essays, so yes, if you answer the question, describe the world you come from and tell us how it's shaped your dreams and aspirations, it's going to work for your main Common App statement, prompt 1, which is tell us your story. But each college is going to have individual supplemental essays, which you can Google what that means. But it basically means, additional essays you'll have to write for the school. And we won't be covering that today, but the supplemental essays will ask different questions like, why do you want to go to this school? Or, talk about a meaningful extracurricular activity. So those are going to be separate essays. What we're dealing with today is your main personal statement, which will go for your Common App, which I'm encouraging you to write for this very particular prompt that'll work for your Common App essay 1. Marilee is asking, is this a 500-word essay? The Common App allows you to write up to 650 words, and I'm going to encourage you to use all 650 words. Okay. Diana asks, if you apply to both A and B, which one do you think we should choose? Diana, so the difference between A and B is knowing what you want to study. The question for you is, do you want to write about your challenges or not? And I'll go back to that question that I said earlier is, do you feel like those challenges help to shape values that are going to serve you in your career? If it feels random right now and you don't see how they're connected, I still want you to try and write about it. So I guess I'm going to encourage you to write about use type A. But if you find out that those are kind of trivial challenges or not that important to you, or there's more stuff that you want to say, then you can write for type B. Surya asks, often there's a divide between essays where they're either written by quirky kids who talk about an everyday experience or everyday kids who write about a quirky experience. Do you think one is better or more easy than the other? I don't think that, honestly, everyday experiences make for very interesting essays. So I'd have to see an example of what you mean. So maybe, Surya, you could send me an example of that. But I find that I'm more interested in essays that really reveal deep, important values. Luis asks, so how one thing connects with something else and makes everything worse? Yes, exactly. You got it. He said, absolutely, thank you so much. Cool, I answered your question. Sam asks, what kind of essay prompts are considered personal statement prompts? So Sam, if you look in the packet, you'll see the Common App personal statement prompts. Those will all be there for you. Can you use this process for prompts that aren't exactly personal statement prompts? Sure. You could use it for scholarship essays, or you could use it for, summer programs, fly-in programs. This prompt, describe the world you come from and how it's shaped your dreams and aspirations, is going to work for a lot of different ones. Okay. Melinda asks, will you send that homework page to us? Yes. Mohammed says, what if I had a hard time choosing only one value from the values list? Mohammed, I want you to go deeper and try and find other values that are really, really important to you. And you can use your partner to do that. And whoever partner ends up working with Mohammed, ask him lots of tough questions to help him figure out what his top values are. Jackie asks, so what question would you ask the kid who had an accident that derailed things? Is the concussion that ended my sports career too overdone? And now I found new sports, new people, things that would have happened if I didn't get the concussion. That is a cliche. Having the sports injury is a cliche. But what I would say is don't make it about the sports injury. Make that the inciting incident in a story that led to a lot of other things. So make it about something other than the sports injury so that the potentially cliche part ends up being backgrounded. What questions would I ask? I'd need more time with the student to be able to know exactly what questions to ask. But if you look at the 100 list of brainstorming, brave and interesting questions, you'll see some cool options. Jean-Claude says, I know originality is very important in the essay, but some of my biggest challenges are pretty generic, like the divorce of my parents and whatnot. So how can I make this an original topic? Jean-Claude, everything that you write about is going to be potentially cliche. The trick is, how do you do it? The way that you bring it to life is through specifics and how they connect to your particular story. I know that sounds general right now, but I just want to encourage you, if it's something that meant a lot to you, I want you to write about it. You'll find something along the way. So I just want to pause and say, I have a couple more questions that I'm going to answer. I'm not sure if the webinar is going to kick us off in 1 minute. If it does, I apologize. And I will record the ending to these questions and still send them out to you so you can listen to them later. But if it does kick us off, thank you for an awesome session. I'll send you your homework in just a little bit. And if it doesn't, stick around and let's keep going. So Jean-Claude says, originality is important, but some of my biggest challenges are pretty generic. Well, what I would say is that if your parents were divorced, that's not generic to you. Like, that was probably a pretty big experience for you. And if it wasn't, then, you don't have to write about it. But if you've identified it as a challenge, like, there's a reason for that. So I would encourage you to, whatever the challenge is, and you can use your partner for this. You can, tell your partner, say, ask me questions about this because I don't really understand how this affected me. Like, my little brother didn't really understand how my parents' divorce affected him until he was 24, until he started to go through other challenges. So it may be that you just haven't figured out what those challenges mean to you yet. But I really want to encourage you to go for it and to dig deeper. Dig into the parts where you're afraid. So if you're if you don't want to write about the divorce thing because you're worried about being cliche, still write it, still go for it. And I want you to speak to and have your partner invite you into an experience of well, tell me really what that was about for you. And I know that's going to feel maybe kind of vulnerable, but go there. Okay, the stuff that you end up coming out with is going to be interesting stuff eventually. You just got to keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And I know that sounds kind of general right now, but just trust me that if you're asking interesting questions, you'll find some interesting stuff. There's gold buried there. Jean-Claude, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to ask it. Jackie says, I think you just quoted the first UC app question, where you come from and how it shaped your dreams and aspirations. So Jackie, I think you missed the beginning of the session, but we are using the first UC app question, describe the world you come from, and tell us how it's shaped your dreams and aspirations as the personal statement question that we're all going to answer. And we're going to use that for our Common App essay. And you can watch the beginning of the session to see why I think that's the best one. Alex asks, are you not allowed to go above the limit of 650 words? No, you're not. You got to stay right at 650. They'll cut you off otherwise. Okay. So Anna says, my passion lies heavily on God and his help in my struggles in academics, but I'm scared of sounding too religious in my essay. What can I do? I want to major both in theology and maybe psychology or biology, and I've also gone through challenges, so I don't know what to do. Okay, Anna, I got it. So for anybody who's interested in writing about religion, here's what I would say. Take out your values list and ask yourself, what values have been shaped for me through my religion? Okay? Because those values are secular. Those values are going to apply to anybody, no matter what their belief in God is or not, or even if they don't believe in God. The way that you connect with a reader who may or may not share your beliefs in God is by talking about the specific values that have shaped you. Do you need to mention your God in your essay? Maybe not even. You could if you want, and if it feels important to you, go for it. But, I think what you're speaking to is like the danger that you're going to put somebody off. I would say if you feel like you're trying to convince them that your view is the only view or is the right view, yeah, then that might put somebody off. But if you're just speaking about personally how your relationship with God or how having God in your life has made you who you are, if you can get really specific about that. And so let me give an example. Let's say you've joined a youth group and it's given you a sense of community and connection with others that you never found anywhere else. Well, that's an example of how, in a roundabout way, connection to God helps you access community. So the value there is community. Okay. Let's say for you, anxiety is like a problem, but you find that when you pray, for me, it's like my mala beads, that you feel calm and you feel centered. So prayer for you has helped you achieve the value of calmness or serenity. So the value is serenity that you're focusing on in the essay. Okay. So don't worry, you don't need to make the God essay. Find something specific, a specific value that you've developed that is somehow connected to your connection with God. You'll find it everywhere. The trick is going to be how few do you do it? And if you know what you want to study, how do you connect those values that also connect to your career? And hey, if you're going into theology, I think it's a great one. But it'll be interesting to connect. How do you connect, God with psychology? Like what values are connecting to like making you interested in psychology, like how people think? Could that also be connected? It doesn't all have to be connected back to God. It sounded like that you wanted to kind of make that a theme in your essay, but you don't have to. You kind of keep it more open-ended, and you could have a couple things that are related to your connection with your spirituality. But then at the end, when you say theology or psychology, if you've given some elements that are values that are not connected to God throughout the first 2/3 of your essay, then when you get to the end, it won't feel off-putting. Don't worry about this too much in the beginning. You're going to use your writing partner, and you'll let your writing partner let you know a few drafts from now, a couple days from now, if it's still feeling too, too pushy or too whatever. Okay. I'm getting some thank yous and some thank yous and some more thank yous. Okay. So Kara asks, can you use more than one value in your essay? So Kara, it's important to use many values. I think a great essay is going to use 7 to 9 values. So if you notice that endodontics essay, we get not just that he's curious, but we get that he's good with his hands. We get that he likes helping people. We get that he's really obsessed with knowledge, with discovering new knowledge. We get, that's 4. So there are probably 7 or 8. I think if there's only one value in the essay, that it's going to seem kind of one-dimensional. So for those of you students who are thinking about writing about challenges, type A or type C, don't just focus on the hard work that you did to overcome it. Look at 7 or 8 values that you developed through your challenge, because that's going to show that you're a much more varied person. And beware of also choosing values that overlap. Like hard work and perseverance is kind of the same value. So choose values that are very different. Hard work and creativity are different, right? Hard work, creativity, and democracy are very different. And showing how you develop those values is going to show much more variety in terms of who you are and what you've got to bring to a college. How do you suggest going about asking someone to read your essay? especially if they're really qualified, but maybe don't have all that much direct contact with you, like a coworker? Great question, Surya. In the agreement, in the thing that I send you, there's going to be a step-by-step on how to ask somebody. It's like a copy and email, a copy and paste thing that you can email them, so you won't put them off. That'll be in there. I'm glad you asked that. Okay, we're over time, but I'm happy to answer a couple questions if anybody's got any more. I'm going to take a sip of water. Great. Raish is asking, do you have up to 1,000 words for the UC prompts? Yes. So if you're applying to the University of California schools, you'll have 2 statements that you need to write. The first one that we're working on, I'm encouraging to be 650 words. That leaves 350 for your other University of California statement. The reason why I'm encouraging 650 is because I think it's your most important statement, and we're going to work the hardest on that one because we're going to double it for the Common App. Okay, so essentially I'm saving you 20 hours of work here because I think it takes about 20 hours of your work to write a great personal statement. So we're going to write for the UC1 prompt. And for some of you, like, may seem, wait, I'm not applying to University of California schools. That seems crazy. Well, the reason we're doing it is because I think it's the best prompt, and it's going to provide the most personal growth and exploration. It's better than kind of keeping it open and like picking random prompts. I promise you this prompt works for everybody. I know that sounds kind of limiting, but anybody can answer the question, describe the world you come from and tell us how it's shaped your dreams and aspirations. And if you're thinking, well, I wanted to write about this particular challenge that I faced, that will work into that prompt. You know, if you didn't make the debate team or you didn't make the soccer team, you're going to want to put that in the larger context of your world and how that experience shaped your dreams and aspirations. Okay, so I'm not boxing you in. I'm actually just expanding whatever you thought you wanted to write about into writing about how that connects to your world and how that's shaped your dreams and aspirations. Okay, that answers Raish's question. I'm getting more thank yous. You're welcome. You're welcome. Sam asks, how do you know if a challenge is significant to use for an essay? Sam, you decide. You decide if it's significant or not. And the way that you would do it is, one, did it really change you? Like, did it help? Did it change your life? If it changed your life, it's significant, okay? The question is, for the reader, you know, how do we show it to them? The way that you demonstrate it's significant is by showing how you developed significant values as a result of that. So if you feel like it, you know, you can type in the box, Sam, what your challenge was, and I can kind of ask you a couple questions. I don't want to get into like a full session, but I can ask you questions and you can actually have your partner ask you questions that will help, you know, lead to, well, how did that challenge lead to certain values? How did that shape certain values and parts of you? Let's see. What if your high school resume obviously shows, this is Jennifer asking, what you want to study? Example, theater. Does the essay need to have the element of surprise about your future career or area of study? That's a great question, Jennifer. And I think, yeah, if part of your application is kind of pointing in a certain direction, you know, yeah, you're going to need something else that's going to make the ending surprising. So if the ending is simply, therefore I want to go into theater, that's probably not going to be a very surprising ending. It's going to be kind of obvious. So we need to introduce another element. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that in the advanced techniques, which is on, I think it's on Friday. But you'll need some other element to make it surprising but inevitable, because it'll feel really inevitable. So great question. We'll talk about how to do that soon. Also, I want to say about that, Jennifer, is that students who already know what they want to study and their activities list really clearly shows that, sometimes they think, well, I shouldn't therefore write about that. But if your resume is clearly showing theater, lots and lots of theater, and you end up writing about why you want to be a doctor, that could be interesting, but it also could feel kind of random to the reader and not really explain the full story. So don't not write about something just because you're self-conscious or that it's too obvious. Just find another element that's going to make the ending surprising. What do I mean by that? Well, a so what that surprises a little bit. I know that's kind of vague. I don't want to get into the details just yet. We got to have something to talk about on Friday. So Sam says, I have a status quo and a new status quo, but no real significant challenge that I'm aware of. If there's no significant challenge that you're aware of, Sam, then I'd say try a type B or type D essay. This is something that your partner can help you figure out a little bit. Any last questions? We'll take one more question and then we'll log off. Okay, we got one. Ethan, what if my experience has actually affected my success in school? Great. Write about it. Don't obsess over like explaining like, oh, I need to like really let them know how important it was. Like I need to like really, you know, apologize. Just in one sentence, mention somewhere where it affected you and when, like how it affected you. Just in passing, but it'll help them give context for why your grades went down at a particular time. If you're too self-conscious about it, or you feel like, oh, I can't really work it into the essay that I'm telling, then you can use the additional info section. Okay? So, I lied. Here's one more question. Last question for sure. Rebecca asks, when you're asking us to find a topic of what we're writing about, is it the challenge or the outcome? I'm not quite sure what that means, but I would say, I guess, if you're finding a topic for an essay, you're going to be writing the challenge and hopefully the outcome. So you're going to have ideas about both of those. Okay, so that's the goal for the first session. Okay, no more questions for now. I will see you in 22 and a half hours. Before then, okay, so before next session, I just want to make sure that you meet with your partner, find your topic, bring your topic to the next session, and then we'll talk about how to outline. Have an awesome time.